morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast, or should I say good afternoon to some of you, good evening to all of our overseas viewers. Welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel, please hit like, please hit subscribe. We're closing in on 10,000 subscribers. It's taken us a very long time for some reason to get to this level, so we're really excited about that. I don't know if you get a bonus with YouTube or they stop harassing us so much on taking down our videos, but 10,000 subscribers is a nice mark for us, so we're excited about that. Also, don't forget that June 26th, we're going to be live and in person in Brooklyn, New York at Project PARLOR in an event with Sublation Media. Homie Norm Finkelstein will be there. Margaret Kimberly at Black Agenda Report. Ben Burgess will be there as well. So it is a free event. So there's no excuse for you guys, if you're in the East Coast, not to come to this thing. It's going to be live. I'm pretty excited about it. And if you haven't seen it already, Pascal Robert was on Brianna Joy Gray's Bad Faith podcast. And I, yesterday, was on The Majority Report with Sam Sita. So if you haven't checked that out, please go check those shows out. Later today, I'll be on Sublation Media with Doug Lane talking about the latest video essay we have, Same as It Ever Was. That being said, I'm joined here today with not really a new member of the crew, but a new vocal member of the crew, vocal for the free show. This person is definitely vocal in the after hours as they are the call screener. Please welcome the headless voice of reason, M. Toussaint.
Hi, everyone. I'm introduced first. That's so great.
It's because I didn't take you off when I was taking everybody else off.
Oh,
So
it's good to be disembodied.
Yeah, the disembodied voice. That's a better word than headless.
Yeah,
You sound less like a monster.
I'll take it.
But speaking of people that are just killing it on the interwebs, this man is single-handedly responsible for having one of the greatest Black actors of all time, LeVar Burton, be a new fan of this show.
Yay.
He is my homie, my dog, the inspiration for the latest TIR video essay. I was giving him all kinds of love on the Majority Report. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings to Jason Miles. I got to give Jason Miles the shout out for killing it on the Majority Report yesterday with his expedition about his wonderful video essay. Brother, I shared that video essay with friends. I put it in all kinds of Facebook groups. People loved it. I loved it. I watched it 3 times. It was, I think, some of your best work. It was a culmination of all of the conversations we've had on Black popular culture that you put together in that video essay, and I thought it was amazing. And I just want to make sure that all the people in our chat are here to give Jason his flowers for the work he puts into to keep This is Revolution podcast alive. You know what I'm saying? We work here, we're a team, him and I, but he definitely puts in the extra hours to keep the show going in ways that I could not possibly compensate for on my own without his assistance. So I want to make sure that we give Jason the recognition that he is due. He often jokingly says that I'm the star of the show. I relent to believe that. I believe that we are a team. Him and I do this together and with our other parts of the team as well. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge this brother, because it ain't easy to do what he does, and it ain't easy to do it in the condition he's doing it either.
Well, I got goosebumps, so thank you very much. And I'm trying to cry. And on that note, before I start to tear up, let's bring in Marcus to the left flank.
Ooh. And actually, speaking of the majority report world, me and Karthik had on Matt Leck and David Grisham yesterday.
Oh, dope!
From Left Reckoning, and as well as like producers of the majority, or actually Michael Brooks show earlier on, and of course from the majority report. But and I also I was talking to Doug on Sublation, their Twitch channel the other day, and I was like, "Yeah, Doug, I'm excited to hopefully get to meet you for the rollout." And like, I'm pretty sure he was just like creeped out, like that someone was like, "I'm gonna find you." But no, I'm pretty pumped.
You coming to the New York rollout?
I'm gonna be coming. There are some excuses. Just because the event is free doesn't mean travel is. So, you know, gas is expensive. But if you can make it, definitely make it up. I'm out. So I'm out. Be happy to actually be in the same room. Like this is gonna be like a real
I'm
thing.
excited about that. Yeah, we're all gonna
right?
be in the same room talking shit. So I won't tell everyone the whole story, what I was saying off air on Majority Report. But you know, Burgess is debating the day before, like Tulsi Gabbard and James O'Keefe and Tim Pool.
Oh wow.
So if you like, I'm like, let's roll out to the Beacon and go hang with Burgess and just talk hella shit and just hoorah the whole time.
I'm having a weird kind of flash. I don't know if it's a flashback. I'm looking at the trajectory of my life. In my late teens, early 20s, I'll be looking forward in New York City going through like a hot house music club or some kind of dance spot. Now I'm in this stage and I'm like, yeah, let's go to a debate between
yeah.
I'm like, what a trajectory.
Yeah, there's a people's library that we could do some good readings. Crazy thing though.
Also, I want to say, because I got all three of us on the air. Oh, first of all, shout out to was it Everyday Skate in San Francisco, where I got this dope ass shirt with King Diamond on it. And anyone that knows metal knows I love old school 80s metal. Dope little skate shop in the Union Square district of San Francisco. But a show that we had hella fun on, one of the better shows we did, had got pulled from YouTube for over a month. For 2 months, the show was pulled. Our show on house music. YouTube finally released the copyright hold.
Thank God. That was a great show.
And that show has we had a guest, Jeremiah McAllister, who worked in the music industry for years, and he dropped so many bombs on that show about like, oh yeah, and that's when I wrote CeCe Peniston's second platinum single. That's when I did that remix for Michael Jackson. That was a fun show. So please go back. I tried to retweet it. Go back and check out the house music show, because it's actually not just about the genre of house music, but the class elements of house music and disco. Just when Jeremiah was breaking down chic, like why they even call themselves chic, to differentiate themselves from other black funk groups.
Yeah, like I think what was kind of interesting too is like what makes it, like kind of getting into like what actually makes a genre, you know, and like a culture surrounding it and everything like that. What made house different, a little bit different than kind of just even like some of the techno stuff, and a lot of that isn't just the music. It's like what surrounds the music that makes it different. But
the best line in that whole show, Pascal asked the question, well, what separates EDM from house? And Jeremiah says, well, if you play it in front of a group of black people, if they dance, it's house. I thought that was hella funny. Oh, also, because we're all together on the screen, Toussaint, are you with us?
I'm here.
You never get to be on air for this. On that show, I rolled this segment out, the trigger warning segment. I haven't been able to do it.
That's the segment I'm glad that we've actually abandoned.
No. It wasn't that it was abandoned. we're never all in the same time. There was always an issue.
Temporary.
Now we're all
hiatus.
here. We have M. Toussaint here. Our guest is in the green room. Our guests can see this too. Juneteenth is coming up. I totally forgot about that. We were having a Juneteenth conversation beforehand. Pascal, now where you grew up in New York, were there Juneteenth celebrations? Your family's
It
from
was
Haiti.
not. I'll be very honest with you. I didn't hear about Juneteenth until I was in law school and I started meeting students who were from Texas. And the way it was presented to me by them is that it was a Black folk in Texas phenomenon. You know, the celebration of Juneteenth was something that Black folk in Texas did. So I'm not saying that that's not what it is. It was presented to me by Black Texans as a celebration of emancipation for Black folk in Texas because of the nuances in the way in which they found out about emancipation after the Civil War. And I was like, okay, cool, no problem. You know, okay, great. But it's only contemporarily as time has progressed that I'm seeing it becoming a national phenomenon. But I've heard that in Arkansas and California, it was bigger.
Where I'm from in California, there'd be small little things. Nothing. My family never celebrated it. They're from Louisiana. And they never really celebrated it. But that being said, that doesn't mean that other Black people can't tell people how and when to celebrate it. Oh,
what?
I discovered this clip on you young people call it Instagram.
The gram.
The gram. Sorry, the gram.
That's what young people call it.
Sorry, the gram. So you young people call it the gram. And this is Melina Abdullah of Black Lives Matter LA. She is activist. Would you call her an activist, Marcus? Activist.
Sure, yeah.
Now I remember her because she got into some beef with some of the mothers of slain young Black children who were killed by police. Was it Tamir Rice's mom and who was the other one? Do you guys remember?
I forget. It escapes me off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm not. I know that Tamir Rice's mom was like, I think, the most vocal, or at least
very vocal, very
documented. But
yeah, but that's kind of where she got on my radar. But I follow her on Instagram, and she says that this is Freedom Day for Black people. It's Solidarity Day for non-Black people of color. Challenge anti-Blackness in your own communities. It's Reparations Day for white folks. Does that mean that they get reparations? Really? Is that like white Christmas? Oh, King is here.
And this is our crew, so you know it's not just me. And this is what we gonna say. I never thought this would be the most controversial thing that we would say. But Juneteenth is not for white people. Do you agree? It's not for you. It's not for you. Juneteenth is literally Black Freedom Day. It's the day that our enslaved ancestors. My family is originally from Southeast Texas, from Beaumont, Texas. This is the day that we got the news late that we were free from chattel slavery. So it is abusive to think that you should come to our Juneteenth barbecue. White people, you don't get to come. Juneteenth is Freedom Day for Black people. If you are a non-Black person of color, we ask that you join in solidarity, do some reading, recommit yourself, undo anti-Blackness in your own community. And if you are white, it is the day for you to pay reparations. And I mean that literally. I mean for you to push for HR 40.
Give me money.
And I mean for you to find a Black neighbor, a Black friend. If you don't have one, make one and give them $100. That's what it is. Look, Michael, I ain't playing. Y'all agree?
Hey,
Y'all
don't
agree?
make no black friends because of Juneteenth. Just give them $100.
Okay, give black people $100 for Juneteenth.
Run the jewels.
Yep. Yeah. What's that's is this supposed to be trigger warning? Is agree with that shit? Chat. How many people in this chat right now?
I mean, but these though,
Marcus, what's your cash app?
Exactly. This shit better be top the motherfucker off by the end of the day.
It gets confusing, right? In the first part, she's like, Juneteenth is not for white people. Only black people can celebrate. But didn't it take the white man's federal government to make it a national holiday?
That's true.
And on that
Besides
note,
the point.
all right.
But that's the thing too is Joe Biden actually owes me $600. Other white folks, it's just $100. All right,
There we go.
We can just make sure we know. Wow. My God. What I don't know. I don't know what the point of that is. I understand when black people say things, you know, when this like that, like I you could get it, right? Or even just fucking around. If you are the top, you know, if you're running Black Lives Matter, you know, LLC, like, come on.
I want to say it's probably a little tongue in cheek. I don't think it's 100% serious. Toussaint says there's a super chat. Hey, another music question. Any good software for home recording? Logic, if you have an Apple. If not, you'd have to let me know what you're using computer-wise, but Logic works really great, especially if you don't know what you're doing. It is the best software for, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just starting out.
MIDI
More
doctors.
so than Pro Tools. But I don't think she's that serious, in all honesty.
Yeah, no, but like that's the thing though, is that you're kind of in a position where, you know, like it's either you need to, like, because like some of that is joking, you know.
It's gotta be.
Like, do you think the whole thing is? Because like what's like the
but Marcus and Pascal, we talked about this a while back. There's black people on Twitter that are like telling white people to cash app them money all the time, and it's like, if they give you $100, then are they even? That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life.
For this year, this is 2022. Next 2023 is coming around again.
She didn't say yearly.
This is an annual event.
Like, I'd have been like, all right, here's $100. Now shut up.
Until Juneteenth, 2023, I will be quiet.
All I want to say is
the wording of it I thought was horrible. It's Reparations Day for white people. Like, they get something.
That was a little interesting. Pay the reparations day.
From what he's talking about, selling your ancestors, paying pretty cheap. A C note, that's all it takes. I was like, damn.
Hey, drop 100. Drop 100. Go to a black person and drop $100. Oh God, I was feeling so guilty, and I went to the ATM and I gave a black person $100. I feel so much better now.
That's good.
But
so, do people believe that this is the actual appropriate way that policy demands for reparations should be made?
Who's gonna pay this phone bill? It's just, hey, real practical, like.
And like, which white people are you mad at? Are you going like what? Like, I grew up with poor as fuck ass white people. Am I gonna go to them and be like, hey, I know we're in the same boat and I had a better boat than you?
Banging on doors at the trailer park. Hey, motherfucker.
I had more family that loved me. But Melina Abdullah says that apparently you owe me $5.
100.
Sorry, $105.
Marcus is not playing.
I
Now he's gonna count.
haven't seen a super chat yet. Just throwing that out there.
That'll be
Find black
free.
people on the show today.
Exactly. Actually, can we bring in the guests to make sure that they know what amount they're supposed to be playing?
What if Pascal walked out of his door today to go on his daily walk, and just a white man was like, "Oh, Pascal Robert," and just went this one.
Hello, brother. Here's $100. Happy Juneteenth
for your trouble.
Y'all laugh, but that actually might become the new Juneteenth tagline. Juneteenth is Reparations Day. It's the day that we got to hit up Whitey for that $100 in the casino.
Not mad at it. I'm really not mad at it.
That sounds like a nightmare. That sounds like a night freaking mare. But on that note, let's bring in our guest. She is a 2-time PhD. One of her PhDs is in science. The other's in social science. That's how smart she is. She was like, I know I've been like a scientist for a gajillion years. I'm going to go back to school and be a social biologist. Please welcome our returning guest and friend of show, double doctor, Christine Louis Dit Sully.
Thank you for inviting me. You don't have to stress the double, doctor.
I'm still your life is always impressive because if you're friends with Christine on social media, every time she posts something, it makes you feel like you haven't done enough in your life. She's like, at 48, I felt like becoming a professional boxer. So then I started fighting.
And with Christine's, it's 2 doctorates. That's $200 for the Juneteenth. Just to be clear,
I suppose that was worth it. That's the reason why I did the second one, just to get a little bit more on Reparation Day.
And Christine, that is Black excellence.
Okay. So I would have 200. I have to say, first, I wanted to say I am really sorry I haven't had time to listen to the talk, the one that you did yesterday, and actually quite a few of the others. And so I feel really bad. I do think that your show is very good, but I haven't been very good in listening to shows at the moment, podcasts. So I'm really sorry.
That's okay. I've been very good.
But I do. And I enjoyed the fact that the show and the discussion that you do, but I haven't been bad recently for the last few weeks, last few months, I will say. So I'm apologizing, but I do I appreciate that you invited me again, despite the fact I didn't do my homework.
Look, I follow you on Instagram.
Yeah,
I would advise people to follow actually Dr. Dit Sully on Instagram. She always posts like some really fascinating little paragraphs on Instagram, right?
An annoying one.
I love them actually. And I want to read a quote from one of your more recent ones from the last few weeks. Our political conversation has been reduced to claims of identity, to an involvement in victimhood competition and a battle against other identity groups and claims in order to win more resources, more power, more privileges, and better social positions for only particular sections of society. This anti-political climate is both the effect and the cause of the very restricted vision and ambitions about the future of humanity. What was your impetus for? And that's just part of a longer quote.
Yeah, longer comment. Actually, and the end of this comment is referring to what I've been saying. Actually, since for the last few months, I have a project, and it's to challenge what is seen as politics today. And I see what is politics today as identity politics, but I do not see identity politics as only from the left, like some people see, so black right or gay and lesbian right or trans right or women's right, but I see it as identity as what is all. So the impetus of the reason that I write the comment is because some people were like, look at these woke people again playing the victims, and for me it's like, why are you complaining about the woke people, supposedly woke individuals playing the victims, when you do the same on the other side? So the anti-woke for me is as bad as the woke, or the conservatives do the same as the left. They just have different identities. So it's basically a point that I keep putting up again and again, because this is what I am trying to develop and to understand. Because for me, I'm going to be having enemies, because I don't think the left as such, in general, I know for me there is a lot of different left, but the left in general doesn't challenge the society that we have today, and is involved in identity politics one way or the other. They just do have different identity groups. So some people will say it's a very general way of looking at the things, but for me, it's like, what is it? Why are we in this situation today? Do we want to fight? Actually, let's go back to the point. You know, the person you were talking about, the person was June 19. I can't remember her name. She's a good example. She's basically talking about black as an identity group and fighting for a black. Mm-hmm. And some people the anti-woke people will argue, yes, it's all about black, and what about the white people? So it's another identity group. And then they will say, well, what about the political identity? I'm a conservative, or I'm a Republican and a Democrat. Why don't we fight for those people? Another identity. And it's all done on the same way. Is that you basically talking about how this identity groups is not being recognized or is being victimized. So the conservative are victimized in academia. Apparently, this is what they are arguing at the moment with education. So the academics are saying that if you're conservatives, you're not very well received in academia. So it's an example. And they are putting themselves against other identity groups, the left with the conservative. And then they also basically, we want to have more. We want to have more voice. We want to have more resources. We want to have more laws. We want to, and when you look at the politics, this is always the same. You define, for example, in America with the CRT, some people argue that you have the parents fighting against CRT. Another identity group, the parents. What does it mean? Somebody who has a child. Okay. This is a very, very general definition, but it's like presented as an identity. The parents are fighting against CRT or indoctrinations of their kids. Another identity groups victimized because their kids are being indoctrinated, and they're fighting back, and they want to have more. They want to have the right to say something in education. And this is, for me, this is what politics is at the moment is seen as. And this is wrong. And until we challenge that, nothing will happen. So that's why I'm also challenging the left as well as the right.
Jason, do you mind if I jump in here? I'd like to ask you a question. Professor Dit Sully, now, I generally understand where you're coming from, but I want to ask a question. Because we framed this show in terms of a conversation of what's going on in Europe, one of the things that I am familiar with your particular home country, with France, even though you're saying that, yes, there's a problem with the way in which identity politics is leveraged in the West, and I can't agree with that. But at the same time, you look at a city like Paris, which is in France. Paris has a population of Muslims that is, some say, 10% at best, right? The prison population of Muslims in Paris, some have argued, is almost 75%. Now, that would argue, I don't think that Muslims create 75% of the crime in Paris, but there's obviously a correlation between the way in which being Muslim or being Berber or being Arab is viewed in the eyes of the legal system in Paris and the way that they are treated. So if we are going to say that all identity as a means of leveraging grievance against either the state or the private sector is either problematic or unfound, how do we deal with situations in which the state or the private sector have a history or a contemporary tradition of discriminating or causing adverse harm to people based on particular identity?
The point is that I'm not when I challenge identity politics, I do not say that discrimination or oppression doesn't exist. So you basically gave an example of discrimination. So discriminations of Muslims in France. And I have to say in France it's very particular because it's not only the populations in prison. There is a huge discussion in France about a French value versus the veil so the Muslim women are being used as a scapegoat to basically saying, this is not about French value, and they want to bring Islam into our country, and we want to be secular, not actually laïc. This is laicity in France. So I'm not disagreeing that there is problems, there is discriminations, and there is oppression in the world. What I'm saying is that if you I start with the point of view of my aim in basically in politics. What do I want? I think that the problems today is the social order that we have today. I think that we could create a society where human beings have freedom, or human beings live like human beings. And so if I start from there, I'm looking at what is today. And I'm saying that if you only concentrate on fighting against discriminations and oppression, i.e. identity politics for a few groups of people, you do not move. All you're saying is that you're going to make the world better, capitalism better within. So you give more right to the blacks, you give more right to the Muslims, you have more space for women, you have more space for trans, but you always looking at the world within what it is today. You do not challenge. So for me, at the moment, the way I see it is as short-term and long-term. And one of the things that people always said is, oh, yes, we have to fight against discrimination now and oppression because we cannot forget. But it is as if somehow one day discrimination and oppression will disappear, and somehow we can think about the longer term. And I don't think it works. So when you fight for Muslims, you fight for Muslims' interest, but you do not fight for the society's interest or the human interest. You see what I mean? I'm trying to develop. I'm trying to agree with more of a universalist politics than the identity politics.
I think what you're saying, and this is where I agree with you, is that even though we will acknowledge that there is discrimination or oppression to fight within a liberal capitalist framework, let's say we acknowledge there's discrimination against Muslims, as in France, or blacks, Latinos, gays, or women, so on and so forth. Our goal is to end that discrimination. Okay, fine. What that technically means is that we want to stop the ability of those discriminated minorities from participating equally in the capitalist system. Well, what exactly does it mean to participate in a capitalist system that is rooted in a hierarchy that demands that the supermajority of people are excluded? What that basically means is that we are only asking for a proportional representation of Group X, Group Y, Group Z on a bunch of chairs on the top of that Titanic that are reshifting while the whole ship is about to sink. And part of the problem with simply framing our ability to challenge the system in terms of X is oppressed, Y is oppressed, Z is oppressed, is that the challenge to the oppression is only rooted in assuming the goal is to get everyone to participate on equal terms in a system that demands inequality by definition. Jason, you follow one?
Yes, we've had this discussion off air.
But you're confirming why it's wrong. I don't understand.
That's the point. I'm agreeing.
He's agreeing with you.
Okay.
I'm agreeing with you that why. But the thing is, though, what is difficult to understand, particularly in this post-civil rights, post-1960s period, because so many people are raised in my generation and Jason's generation and Marcus' generation in America to look at the civil rights movement as this almost like religious period of almost kind of like a holy period of American awakening, where the United States came to its true senses and opened the doors of justice. And it's not until we read people like Torrey Reed and Adolph Reed who will show you that, do you know that during the civil rights movement, the leaders of the movement were saying this is not going to be enough to fix the problem because it doesn't address the problems of capitalism for Black people, in that they are disproportionately not able to participate in a system that is shrinking.
Well, would you guys all agree though that a lot of these identity movements that we see are very inclusionist and not transformist movements?
Well, yeah, and I think that's like I guess the whole part of the problem is that it's just how do you usher in enough of this segment to get them to shut up, and not necessarily how do we help people. And I think that's like really like across the board. And you see, and like I think Juneteenth and the Biden administration making it a national holiday kind of encapsulates that. It's more about how do we appease enough of Black people to say to stop saying please do something for us, right? And they'll just do as many minimal things. And that's like where I guess like my disappointment too, like overall the whole thing with dealing with identity politics is that it I guess came from something that actually was tied to material conditions, especially when there's these obvious lines between different between race and class, that in the way that Pascal even describes it of if you look at a certain segment, Muslims in Paris, and do those numbers, having saying okay, well, we need to release these Muslims out of prison, that fixes a specific issue that's addressed, that's happening to this identity, within the population. However, that only just allows, the system to do that again to some other identity later on. Right. And that's, I think we're all agreeing on that. Right?
The original clip I was going to play was a little longer. It was Clint Smith, who's kind of a new iteration of Ta-Nehisi Coates, on Democracy Now!, talking about the importance of Juneteenth and why we need to celebrate it, and how there's an attempt to roll back education even of slavery with CRT laws that we're seeing even at as young as elementary schools. So this becomes kind of a fight almost, it seems like. That does it feel like an unnecessary fight in you guys' opinion?
You're hitting on something really important, Jason, is that we have a battle for narratives. We have one group of people who are saying critical race theory is important because we have to teach the real history of the United States, quote unquote, the real history. And then you have another group saying that I don't want this history being taught because all it's about is trying to make me feel guilty for being white. And the question becomes, is there a capacity that we have to teach a history that is honest to what the past is about this country, that is not politically motivated in any way? Because what I'm seeing is that people are expecting absolution by history. In other words, they're expecting that once you tell white folk the truth about America, they're going to all of a sudden say, yes, we're going to want to do justice and do fair to the Negro and everything will be all right. And indeed, as if that's what politics, really? So y'all think like having people see episodes of what was going on in the 19th century is going to make white folks say, oh, yes, absolutely. we have to give black folk reparations. Material interests have to be contested for in political spaces, and people have to be won over through solidarity to advocate for certain policy changes. And when you're saying that you want to set up a paradigm where you're expecting people to contribute economically from their wealth to benefit one group, you got to make that politics a reality. Not based on saying, well, as long as we just tell people the history of America, they're going to be fine and want to just pour out checks of reparations.
You cannot have history. I mean, for me, history is the actions of people throughout time, and basically history is human activity, but it will always be the understanding of the past will always be affected by our political or our intellectual and political point of view. I don't think it's a problem. For me, it's the aim. You know, when we act, for me, the problem today is that everything is very conservative. I think there is a really close-minded attitude in everything intellectual and political. We cannot go further. We cannot think further than how we're going to manage what we have today. I see it as politics as management. So, do we want to have these policies or these laws, or how many amount of dollars for the wage? Or this is it's about management. There is no big ambitions. There is no aim. That there is no belief that human can create something that is different than what it is today. I mean, the only things that I see somehow with the highest ambitions are sometimes the green, and I don't agree with green politics, but the green have an ambitions of changing society in a for me a little bit too much anti-progress, but they still have a little bit of ambitions. The real religious people have this ambition that human beings are still important, so they have kind of a positive things, but there is no ambition that human beings can create themselves and can create society that they live in, can recreate and create it. So when we are looking at politics, it's always about how we're going to manage America, France, Britain, or my village. How we're going to manage our life, our everyday life, very often. And for me, this is not politics. And I think it's not a coincidence that all the left, the socialists and the communists are gone, because there is a closing of the mind, and there is a very conservative attitude. And everybody, when the reason why also identity politics is becoming also even more fragmented is because there is also this individual things. That's the only way you can understand the world, is that you and your family against the world. So your identity becomes even more restricted. It says, for me, it would be like a black woman, heterosexual, living in Germany, in France, and then I have this identity. So do you understand what I'm saying? Is that I think there is a bigger problem, and there is no discussions of the bigger problems. All you have in the left discussions is always about should we support these policies, or should we support the Democrat party or the Labour Party? Or how are we going to do that? But there is no bigger possibility or belief that we, as human, can create something that will help and be good for human. Do you see what I'm trying to say? And I think that for me, when you don't have this aim, then the politics that you develop becomes identity politics. So you're going to think about black and women and men and academic and bean workers. You're going to end up basically talking about fighting for different little groups of people. So,
well, what do you say to people that may call that a colorblind argument?
Oh, it's nothing to do with colorblind. I mean, I think colorblind, at least in American concepts, for me, is a way of saying, if first of all, there was a colorblind where they were saying no, there was no problem anymore. So we're all the same, black and white. This is not true. And the colorblind argument today is basically saying if you change your own intellectual or mental view of the world will change. So it's a very individualist way of looking at it, and it doesn't challenge. It doesn't understand the society. It doesn't understand the material condition that we have today, and it's part of liberal politics. It's very individualist. It's just a bit saying like, if I see my husband being the same as me, then everything will be okay. And no, nothing to do with colorblind. For me, it's understand the roots of our problem. So that's why I try to. For me, we have to look further than the fragmented groups that we have in society. We have to see what is the problem. And if you're a left, you will look at the social structure, the social order that we live in. So you can fight for improving capitalism, but fighting for improving capitalism, it's just staying within capitalism. You're just basically saying, can we improve the life of a few individuals? But you don't challenge.
And I guess on some level, do you think it comes down to how, and not just like, hopefully this is like tips for the left or, but everybody's kind of doing this. But how does it come down to like basically framing, or like putting that identity first and not actually seeing how does the, the structure of society play on these different identities? Do you think it can be as simple as making sure that you have that framing of, like you said, humanity first, but when you're discussing someone's issues, that you having an understanding of how those whatever society, whether it's housing, healthcare, whatever, how these type of things actually play on a specific, so like for Black women having, a higher mortality rate through pregnancies than white women, like you still that can be in the conversation of a universal healthcare, system, but having to know those nuances and everything like that is, I guess, one of the faster ways to actually get people to trust that that this is actually the solution. So do you think people have to kind of play, or I said, like with the rhetoric around identity, or use the rhetoric around identities, but it has to be under the narrative of changing this system for something that does work for everyone?
Let's put it this way. I mean, at the moment there is a big discussions, and I just come from a holiday in the islands where my family originally come from, Martinique, and the life there is absolutely around us. I mean, for me, it's just really expensive. You spend hundreds of euros just for, and you look at your carrier and there is nothing in there, and then it's like 200 euro for a few things. So the cost of living is really important, especially for people who don't have a high wages. So you could say, well, yes, we want higher wages for people so they can have a better living. Then you have the people saying, well, for example, Black women don't have the same opportunity in academia. So let's fight for having better access for Black women in academia. Then you will have, there is a lot of single issues that you can take up, and you can. I mean, it's not a problem to discuss those kind of single issue, but the problem is that we always stays on those singles issue. Politics is all about single issues at the moment. So you can justify and say, yes, there is discrimination and there is oppression and there is war and there is all that kind of things, but there is no discussions about what is the root of those problems and how do we, actually the important question is, why do you want to resolve those social problems? Because you could say society is good enough. Human beings are, this is a lot of people thinking now, human beings are bad animals. They are all selfish, greedy, and the society is at the level that is the best. And there will be always war, always death, always this and always that, yes? So you will have to ask the question, why is it you think we should change society? Is there something that human can do more than what it is today? And I, first of all, believe that human are not acting as human today. we are social beings, but we are alienated from our own humanity in that way. We are not free. We are under material conditions that makes it that the society is as if it was something outside us. And we are arriving at, and I think for me, we arrive in a time where there is a possibility for humanity to go further than something that control and determine our destiny. That's the reason why I think we can think of something different today that in the past you wouldn't. Today we arrive in a society where we have the things today that allows us to be controlling our own destiny. And controlling our destiny, we means also resolving the social problem that we have today. And the social problems is related to the social order that we have today. So I start by believing that there is a possibility for something better and that it is necessary to have something better for humanity. And then I'm looking at how do we do that? So if we stay in politics that is, for me, identity politics is capitalist politics. If we stay in politics that is today with the different identity groups fighting with each other, we stay there. We just accept that things are permanent and we just different groups of people challenging each other. We accept that humanity as a whole has a possibility of resolving their problems, at least that we have today, once and for all. And then how do we understand? And Marx did it. Marx understood at least some of it on the level of the structures and the economy. And we have to go further. How do we go further than what we have today? So for me, when you look at the left, it's all about identity politics in the past and in now. The only difference is that identity politics has become very fragmented because we are in a time where there is no notion of solidarity. There is a notion of the individual against everybody else. We are all enemies. It's our hate, and everybody else can be enemies to me. This is how we see. We see ourselves as the individual in ourselves. We are born a certain way, and everybody else is the enemy. So the identity politics that was in the past, because race started in the 19th century, so race politics was identity politics. Identity politics in the past became even more fragmented and even more vicious.
Do you think that like this kind of focus on identity politics is just like the end result of the kind of focusing on the individual or individualism in general? And I know like the United States, as you talk about like the rugged individualism that's been like injected into our culture. I mean, do you see any like connections, that like if the individual is the most important thing in a society, then eventually all politics becomes, the politics of like the individual identity.
But in fact, when you think about it's individuals and not individuals, we are the liberal, because at the end of the day, most of the politics today is one form of liberalism. Left or right is one form of liberalism. And the individual that we have today is not real individuals of the it's not individuality of the social beings, because human beings are social beings. They are reflecting society in which they live, but the society reflecting them also. So the humanity is the social beings, and then the individuals that we have today are not, how can I explain it? For me, they are not human beings as the possibility of humanity to create themselves. The individuals, they are basically how you see individuals today as this closed and entity that are living in a vacuum with the different other individuals, and we're all enemies from each other. This is so. It's not really about humanity. It doesn't see humanity in a human way. It's not explained very well. It's the things about humanity is that we, throughout our history, is that we created ourselves through the natural world. So we have to interact with the natural world, but also with the society that's been created and with ourselves. So humanity has changed and creates itself all the time. So we are social beings. But until now, we have no possibility of understanding that it is possible for us to control our destiny, to go further than it is today. So the individual that we have today, the way that people see it as individual, is that they are seeing this individual as an object, basically an object that things are happening to them. There is, am I a kind of?
Yeah, well, I think like you kind of even get to the point of like where we're at now with like this post politics, where like none of the problems are actually getting solved that we're addressing, and then it's just a lot of people kind of just jockeying for, you know, I need my specific grant because I'm a black son of Jamaican immigrants that's a millennial but elder millennial, and like I gotta like check all these boxes, but then in my free time I gotta just fight for another box to be added to the list that specifically centers me instead of the overarching problem of school shouldn't cost so much or it shouldn't cost anything at all. What creates these type of dynamics and stuff like that.
One of the things that that I noticed that you mentioning, Christine, is about the failure of the left to create a politics rooted outside of identity. Don't you think part of the problem, and I would say this is the larger problem, is that the left has not decided that it's even sure it wants to challenge capitalism? So I think that one of the larger problems is that we don't even know the terms upon which we're fighting. If you agree there is a left at all.
I agree with the people who argue, and there's a few people at the moment saying that, who argue that the left and the right are part of bourgeois politics. I think you know one of the person who is on Twitter who is keep pushing that, and I agree with him. I think it's we have lost the radical, the real radical politics that other people had done, like Marx has done, and I don't know much about all the other intellectual, but that we have lost the radical part of what should have been the left, in a sense of anti-capitalist. So there is no real anti-capitalist society. So when you look at the anti-capitalist people, especially the young, but also all the anti-capitalist groups, what they express is more of a, we are fed up with society and we're not very happy, and so they are kind of going away from, they don't criticize the social order, they just go away from it. It's like we don't like it, we hate it, for example, we are green, or it becomes a very individualist way of looking at the world and saying this is no good, this is not good enough. Capitalism is not good enough. We want to make it a little bit more, a bit less bloody, a bit more fair, a bit more. But this is the anti-capitalism that you have today.
A little more humane, right? if we have a little bit, make it a little bit more humane, right?
Exactly.
And, well, what I see, and I don't know if you feel this way because you live in Europe, and I do want to pivot to what the show was titled, "What's Going On with Europe." Yeah. What I've seen is we have a very young left, and I use inverted quotes with left because I think there's a lot of people that were apolitical 6 years ago that now have dove headfirst into trying to understand complex theories and feel that they have to know so much to call themselves a leftist or a socialist or a Marxist or whatever ist you want to call yourself to feel like you're part of a different identity group, as we've been talking about here. But because of political defeats, and what energized a lot of these people in the first place was electoral politics, the run of Sanders and Trump, the fear of some sort of fascist regime here in the States. Post the first Sanders lost in 2016, or the Hillary Clinton, whatever you want to say, the rise of Trump in 2016, you get all these younger people that maybe were doing canvassing for Bernie Sanders that now become candidates for federal offices. kind of being the antithesis of what we've been seeing with the right wing, where the right wing is like, let's get into the community and get a stronghold in the community and build from there. It almost felt like people goes, well, let's do what this AOC lady did, and let's all get a real cool viral video and run for a state house, and then we'll just defeat fascism and capitalism with a bunch of hot young socialists. We're just going to get a bunch of cool, hip people that call themselves socialists to run in these offices. And there was a ton of defeats, right? Because a lot of these people had no chance of winning anything. And now we're seeing even things like the DSA. I know you guys talked about this, I think, last week, being used as branding for people that are actually running against true progressive candidates. And this is what we're seeing in local offices. There's a friend of show that actually worked for a local politician, or I shouldn't say local, Los Angeles, and he was sending me a message that they lost to the DSA candidate. The DSA candidate had Hollywood, this is for a city council seat, had Hollywood money, Netflix money, and I think there was another major corporation that was backing the DSA candidate. That was DSA in name only. And another friend of ours in academia, Pascal, also talked about how people are joining the DSA to kind of have it as a resume builder. So it does kind of feel like a lot of what we're seeing is the after effect of a young burgeoning left not really understanding the long battle for true transformative change. It doesn't happen overnight, because first of all, we have to understand we're trying to see the world in an entirely different way. So it feels like now we're seeing more and more people kind of retreat back into identity politics. You know, the elite capture book being, a big thing. Before it was just kind of Ta-Nehisi Coates and X Kendi and Robin DiAngelo as the big names. There's a lot more large names, like I said, Clint Smith earlier, that are just kind of digging in with identity politics in this time of almost it feels like leftist defeat.
Almost, or it is. I don't think it's almost. I think you're kind.
I am. I am. And we're seeing it somewhat globally as well, because in the last, would you say 6 years, we have seen a bit of a rise of the right.
What we've seen, what we believe that we were reduced to this binary, but we had the rise of the reactionary right that comes out of the 2008 economic crash, after the austerity in Europe and the dissatisfaction with the austerity. We see that because the neoliberals or the liberal capitalists in Europe and the West are unable to really bring forth any quality of life for the citizens, they turn to austerity after the 2008 crash. Austerity is a fancy word for cutting government services in the face of the excesses of capitalism. And and people pivot to the reactionary right, starting in Europe, and they start to grow in popularity. Eventually, they start to take political positions and develop parties, and they actually start capturing political positions in actual governance. You see this with the rise of what's his name in England, Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister,
Boris Johnson.
Boris
Johnson.
Boris Johnson. In France, we always had Marine Le Pen was a character. She did not win in the last election. We have the UKIP party in England. We have the League with the 5 League, I think, in Italy. I think they had what was a party, the Dawn or the Golden Dawn in Greece. All of these, we have Viktor Orban in Hungary. all of these reactionary right-wing constellation that expanded outside of Europe. We had Bolsonaro come about in Brazil. We had Duarte in Philippines, even though he recently lost. We have Modi in India.
But you also replaced him with Bong Bong Marcos, so it's
Right,
not
who
like
was
you
still
replaced him
reactionary.
with the leftist version, right?
But we had this period where we thought we were in this dialectic or this kind of binary of the liberal or neoliberal versus the reactionary right. And what I saw as a consequence of this binary is that the left was irrelevant because the left was unable to challenge either position for authority in the conversation. So you saw Corbyn in England get eviscerated over things like charges of anti-Semitism, or some say he was unable to come up with an answer to the Brexit issue, right? You saw Hillary Clinton dissolved by Trump because she couldn't campaign in the Midwest. She was unable to really do her job with the campaign, which terrified Americans. They never thought someone like Trump would become president. And the question becomes, I want to ask you, Christine, when we talk about the condition of Europe and the world and these things on the left, are we still stuck in the binary between the liberals and the neo-fascists or the neoconservatives? And is the left still absolutely irrelevant in this discourse? Is the left on the sidelines, sitting around playing chess or checkers or twiddling its thumbs while the world burns between these two paradigms?
It's a difficult question to answer for me, because I will say that what you see as the left, I see it as a different type of liberals. So you have the lefty liberals and the righty liberals, and then you have the very extreme conservative. But most of it is liberal. There is, I wouldn't call Corbyn. I mean, if you call Corbyn left, or if you could Mélenchon today left, if you call Clinton left, I'm sorry, but in that case, that confirms my point of view. The left, right, part of bourgeois politics. There is no opposition, a real anti-capitalist. And what I mean by, for me, the left, if it was the left, I think I will call it something else, but there is no anti-capitalist opposition. And there hasn't been for decades. Because most of them will argue that we have to change, we have to, like you said, we have to challenge the excesses of capitalism. That is not what I support. To challenge the excesses of capitalism doesn't mean socially transforming the society that we have, the capitalist society. It just means make it a little bit better. And that's liberalism. That's what liberals are always been about. Challenging, since to get the support from the working class when the socialists were started to be, when the workers in the 19th century started to develop movement, the liberal basically argue that we need to challenge the excesses of capitalism. This is how they get the support, and this is what we have. This is what is called the left. So today there is still left liberal, and there's still the extreme right wing and the very conservative point of view. But the very conservative point of view is not very strong at the end of the day. It's the liberal, left and right liberal, fighting each other within the system that we have today. That's why I said that the society is really conservative. There is no concept of going further than what we have, the liberal setup.
And I guess this is a question for everyone, because and especially I kind of like bringing up what Jason said of like the loss as a recent defeat of the left, and I think something that we've kind of keep hitting on the show and also on this thing is like right now there's not a solidified left, right? There's no actual anti-capitalist opposition. Do you see any positives in some of the things? And you say like in in South American countries, like Bolivia, Venezuela. I mean, even in Brazil, like Lula is looking like he's going to be able to beat Bolsonaro. Is there do you see any hope in those openly institutionalized, left movements, Chile as well? Is there any hope coming from South America?
I haven't. I have to say, even if I said that there is no real anti-capitalist opposition, I do not. I haven't lost. I'm not one of those people saying this is it. Things will get bad, and I don't have this kind of down black view of the future that a lot of those people who say the same as me sees. And so I think that there is quite a few individuals around the world who also recognize that there is not a proper anti-capitalist opposition to. And what I mean by that anti-capitalist opposition is not just like who hate capitalism, but to recognize that we need to change society because there is a possibility of something that is better than what it is today. So, and there is people all over the world doing that. At the moment, there is no movement because it's the hardest things that we can do, because you have to be able to change your level of thinking or consciousness, or you have to see the world in a different way to be able to recognize that humanity that is presented today is not what humanity could be. It doesn't. We are breaking the potential of humanity by staying in the society. It's ongoing conversations, and so at the moment, for me, the liberal left, because that's what this left is about, the liberal left are a barrier. So I have to say again, I agree with the people who are anti-left as well as anti-right, because I think that the left is always a way of appeasing people. So people, when you talk to young people or even older people are kind of tired. They know there is problems today. They're tired of fighting. The world is, you have a cost of living higher, older people dying in a bad retirement home. You have all these things that people recognize there is a problems, but there is no mind saying, but humanity can do something different. So the reactions, so there is a rejection to what we have today, but there is no let's do something different, except, like I said, some Green Party who imagine the world in a more green way, or changing the economy within communities and that kind of things. But there is no we can do something further. Humanity can do something. This is the point, is that there is no human politics. What I mean by universalist politics, it's human politics. For me, politics is about the notion that we humans can create something for the future, can control our destiny, can basically create a world that is good for humanity. And at the moment, there is nothing like that. I mean, there is individuals different places, but there is no.
Yeah, no,
and the left is a problem.
Yeah, I guess after that, and thank you really with that other explanation. I completely I completely agree, because what even those individual, you have like whole countries that are moving in moving in the right direction. What's missing is the overlap and the connection to an international movement, and that's kind of where recently Mexico's president was kind of bucking the U.S. hegemony.
We don't talk about Mexico. Good person. Everyone in Mexico is great. There's no cartels here.
Well,
moving on.
On this specific point of bucking the U.S. hegemony, not showing up for the Summit of the Americas because they didn't invite Cuba and Venezuela, and also it was something. There was another something else with foreign policy wise, but then a lot of people also put on
everything's great.
I'm not saying everything is great.
It
I'm
doesn't
just
matter
saying.
what you say. Everything is great. Everything's great here in Mexico. The weather is fine.
I'm about to give a
drink the water
cartel your
straight out the
address.
tap. I haven't died yet.
But no, and that's where I think, and where Christine, I agree with you, is that without the higher layer connecting all of these things with the goal, right? With a shared goal that we're going to make the world better, and in very specific ways. We are kind of left with, if not individual people, but these individual groups and sections that are really, still need that opposition to actually solve those problems. So you changed my mind. Thank you.
Okay.
But I mean, so what does the political situation look like in France? Because Pascal brings up actually a very interesting point that you do have a situation out there where there is an impoverished group of Muslim brownish people. What is the situation there through your?
The Muslims are not the only. I mean, France has. It's not only the Muslims. I mean, there is discussions in France about this French value that you have also in other places. I mean, what does it mean to be French and the French value? So they're using the veil and the burkini in France as a way of basically pushing the more conservative point of view. But in France, I mean, you heard of the Gilets jaunes last few years.
Yellow vest protest.
Pardon?
Yellow vest protest.
Oui, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Gilets jaunes is in French word. Yeah, yellow vest. Sorry, but the pronunciation is gilets jaunes.
Yeah.
But anyway, yellow vest, and so
Gilets jaunes. Did I say it okay?
Yeah, gilets jaunes. So yellow vest. But I mean, it was a movement where it was actually there was a lot of people who had never been involved in politics, involved in the yellow vest movement, because it was basically a kind of a reaction, and people are still there, a reaction to the austerity and the policies that Macron was doing. So that's the reason why also during the election there was a lot of anything except Macron. So Mélenchon got the vote from that. I mean, I know a lot of people who voted Mélenchon not because they are anything lefty about their politics, but it was like anything apart from Macron. But also, of course, not Le Pen, because Le Pen was, except some people, of course, think Le Pen is better. But for example, in the West Indies, for example, I think they had more than 50% of the people who did vote voted for Mélenchon. Quite a few of them West Indies places. So and in some places in around Paris and in the south of France, the places where you have a lot of Muslim, for example, black or working class people, basically. But this is the thing, is that there is no opposition. So they're using this Mélenchon against Macron, or the Le Pen against Macron, because there is no... people are angry, people are fed up, but there is no notions of we can do more than just asking for better wages for the nurses, or better wages for the better retirement because there's a lot of people who were retiring in the yellow vest, better retirement money, benefits. There is no... it's like, for me, it's like people are feel alienated from the society that they live, but there is no explanation and how to go forward, how to build an opposition to what's happening. So they move from one place to the next. I mean, when you look at the French elections, presidential elections, and now the French legislative, the abstention is big. 50%, I think it was for the first tour of the legislative was 52.49% abstention. People can't be bothered to go voting, and it's not because, and I'm talking about 52% of the abstention amongst the registered voter. So there's a lot of people who don't, not even registered voters, because it's not, you don't have to be a registered voter. So a lot of people don't have any say, or don't think that they can have a say in what's happening in their own society. So do you see what I mean? This is a very...
I was about to say, you're making an argument that there's a friend of show, Daniel Besner, who's a guy who's been on our show several times, who's an academic like yourself. He has a PhD in, I think, international relations and political science. He wrote an article, and I'm writing an article responding to it, called The End of Mass Politics. The End of Mass Politics. And his theory is that the structure of Western society, particularly in America, has become so alienating from citizens that the expectation that they can actually change or influence their government or politics has been lost, to the point where mass parties, mass protests, and mass movements have lost their ability to influence governance and politics, because the technocracy that was built in the early 20th century around institutional mechanisms, whether they be think tanks, nonprofits, or quasi-governmental mechanisms of social control, particularly think tanks, have so effectively taken over society that human beings are now alienated from believing that they can even affect the capacity to influence politics. Do you think there might be some truth to his argument, Christine?
I think, well, yes, but I go a bit further. It's not only politics. People, there is no belief that humanity can affect their own destiny. And so it means that it's reflected in the politics that we have today. And I agree that, for example, how the way democracy is seen today, and for a long time, is in a very technical way. You go and vote. That's why some people will say, well, if you don't vote, you're not supporting democracy, or we need to have voting. Because democracy today is only seen as a very technical discussions on whether it should be a PR democracy, proportional representation, or direct democracy. There is no discussion. There is not even a notion that people, majority of people, can have a say in the governance of the society. So yes, it's been seen as idealistic or madness to believe that all human beings, can have a say in their own world. So that's why you have discussions that, to have democracy, we cannot have direct democracy. We have to have a proportional representation democracy, because then some people can vote and then help. There is no notion that human beings, the majority of people, can have a say in the governance of the society or in the governance of the world, human world. And the technocratic world that we have today has institutions, has promoted this point of view, this negative, this anti-human view even further. So today, when you look at, because there is no opposition, people are thinking, we've been fighting for better world, nothing has been happening. What's the point of doing it? Because always the rich win. I mean, there is a lot of people. I mean, my family don't have the same background as me, like, PhD or double PhD, whatever. So there is a lot of this, the rich will always win. What's the point of basically voting? Or if they go voting, they will say, well, let's have a little bit, let's have better wages, or let's have a lower cost for gas, or let's strike. I'll come back again to this really narrow conversation that we have today. So even if we have vicious fight within politics, the discussion is completely reduce to how we're going to change a little bit of it, how we're going to challenge one excess of capitalism and let the others be okay.
Well, does the conversation seem like it's more of one of survival, though? Because,
Yes.
you know, I was recently, there's a burger place that I like to eat at. It reminds me of home. It's the one place that reminds me of home down here. And I was talking with the owner about my water situation. I think I've said it on the show. My water goes out randomly where I live, like just turned off. Has nothing to do with non-bill payment. They'll just be like, oh, pipe's out. What pipe? That's weird. I don't see anything that would cause that to be out. And he was telling me that a friend of his that lives in Monterrey, Mexico, part of Monterrey, Mexico, said that they have a time now. It's like 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. You better get everything done in that time frame, because after that, the water is getting shut off. And I didn't know our water comes from the same place that California is getting their water from, here in Baja, Mexico. So where they're kind of trying to ration people's water in California, and they're not really doing a really good job of it, ours literally would get shut off. Like there's newspaper articles that's like, okay, if you live in this part of Baja, Rosarito, your water is going to get shut off for 24 hours. And that, I bring that up because it feels like in this part of the world, people are just used to getting crapped on by American empire. That's just what it is. But the American side, it feels like people are just kind of battling for survival, right? Can I just get a couple more dollars an hour? Can we get a little bit more aid from the government? As Pascal always says, the seats on the Titanic, it feels like that's what kind of everyone is vying for, as we are currently in this environmental collapse that, you know, it seems like most politicians are, you know, doing the whole, if I don't see it, it doesn't see me, like children do. But
I'd like to add to that, Jason, if you don't mind, because I think you asked a very important question about, is this a matter of survival? Can we take it a little further? Is this a consequence of modernity itself? In other words, if we were living in the 19th century, the literal technological capacity of social control, industrial mechanisms, corporate mechanisms, the distance between our actual capacity to create food, shelter, housing, and our own labor, that alienation, the alienation between what is considered work and actual capital, and the alienation between what is considered time, okay, is different with the rise of technology, industrialization, post-industrialization. Now we're entering the digital world. Is the alienation that we're talking about from the capacity to influence politics something that is also worsened by the position of technological modernity that we're in that human spaces don't even mean the same thing at all anymore? Where is the commons? What is the commons for the contemporary human being?
Twitter.
Is it the internet? Is it Twitter? Really? Is it Instagram?
That's what Twitter sells itself as, is the online public square.
I'm not against. I think Twitter and Facebook and social media and the fact that we are more digital, I think it's a great thing. It can be a tool. It can be the discussions on those levels. I found them too technical, because it's like as if, for example, people were arguing that, you know, when you build the friendships through social media, it's not the same as before. What? How? I mean, people used to write each other by letters, taking 1 month to arrive, and they were still being friends and having the same conversation. I mean, slower conversation that we have today. I think it's wonderful that we can have connections instant connection between. I mean, I'm in Germany, you're in America, and one is in Mexico. I mean, this is fantastic. But so I don't think it's a problem of modernity. For me, I think it's just great. This is the first time in the world, the first time in our history that we can have a conversation across the globe. This is something that we should be celebrating. My problem is also not modernity, because I think it's the alienation is not the fact that we have industry, it's the opposition between the capital and the labor power. So I'm talking about the social order, not the social in the sense of interpersonal relationship. It's not the interpersonal relationship between people. It's not the political, or it's not the cultural problem. It's not the cultural, social as interpersonal relationship, and political and cultural realm. This is a problem. Is the underlying social order that creates an alienations that human beings are feeling. So we do not see ourselves. What we see today is only in the appearance of what. So basically, when we work, we see the world as if it was something that is outside us. You know, the world is organized, and we is that basically we're living in that world, and we should be. So it's not. I'm using a French word. We are passively victims of this world. You know, the market, the working, the wages. It's all. It is as if it is outside us, because of the way that the world is organized today, with the opposition between the labor and the capital, labor power, and capital, and the
You don't see
alienation.
that as a product of modernity, though.
Sorry?
You don't see that as a consequence of modernity of the modern world.
But the point is that with the discussion about modernity is that, first of all, the definition of modernity, some people will, I don't know your definition, but the definition of modernity is always about, more towns and more automizations. And I don't think this is a problem. Actually, it's, for me, it is a technical way of understanding the world, because a society, the problem of society, it's not the relationship between you and me. It's the underlying economic way that we are producing a society. So for me, it's the human activity is producing society, and is that human activity, how it is translated. Sorry, how our human activity is translated within capitalist society that is creating the alienation. So what I'm saying is that you cannot have the word society, human society, without human, and humans, the society, come from our human activity. We human goes against natures and control natures and act with nature to create the world with us and society. So we also act on ourselves, and this human activity creates the world today. But at the moment, the way this human activity is, it's going through, it's making us misunderstood who we are. Make us misunderstand who we are. We do not see human beings as the agents of our destiny, because we see very often society as there and we us living under it. You see what I mean? And the liberal, even worse, that they only see the relationship between you and me, and between individuals, and our opposition to each other, and that's it. They don't see much society except the institutions and the governments and the state. But this is the whole society they see. They don't even see the underlying economic structure. And what I mean by economic structure, it's how our human activity is producing society. I think we have to go. I mean, I'm rereading Marx and rereading all these kind of texts, but we have to understand how humanity for the last few thousand years have lived. How do we produce and reproduce each other? We have the world, nature, we have the humanity, and we have our social worlds. How do we reproduce? How have we reproduced? What was the underlying social world that creates a society? So how does our human activity creates? I don't know if I'm very clear. An animal will live in the world, and very often they will take something from the world and just they live. We are acting with and against nature, with and against ourselves, with and against our social world. And it is our activity that creates history, and it's our activity that creates our social worlds. Of course, there is also a objective world. So there is no discussion that there is a world outside us, but it is our human activity that is important to understand. So today, there is an opposition between the capital and the labor power. And I think that creates a world where most people do not understand what humanity is about, how we create ourselves. So, but when we go back to, anyway, for me, the reason we cannot go and discuss that like that. For me, what is important is that if we have the hope or understanding that there is something more that humanity can have, if you believe that it's not what the end of the world, this is not the end of history, there is more than it, then you have to understand what is the underlying problems and how can we resolve it. Now, this is what is missing today, is that people think that what we have today is permanent, natural, this is human nature, and that we just have to manage ourselves. All politics is about managing the world that we have today. It is seen as a permanent, natural end of history. And we look at how much gallon of water we can have, and what I mean is technical managing. It's no longer politics as how, because the Greek developed politics, and developed politics understanding that humanity could create a better world, or at least a world for themselves, a human world compared to a natural world. So you have this move towards human worlds compared to natural world.
Well, Dr. Sully, this is not a new development where we are in right now, this position. We've been here for a while. Would you not agree?
Yes, but we are in a capitalist society, which is a different society than it was before in another society. So I think I agree with people who argue that we are in a society where we have groups of people, the people who are the workers, so the people who do not own the means of production. We have a particular society where the lower class, has the possibility of making it where their interest is related to the interest of humanity as a whole. So when you had the revolutions before, it was a class with another class fighting, what is the interest of one class over another class. Today, we have the lower class. The freedom from the opposition between labor power and capital is to the freedom of the working class is to abolish itself, yes, and the abolition of itself is to develop the freedom of humanity. That's the only reason. That's the reason why today we have a possibility that we did not have before. The society that we live today is not the same as before. So the possibility that we have to create a new one, it's not the same. That's what I'm trying to say. Somebody in the cave will not have the same possibility, the same consciousness, or the same possibility that we have today.
And moving forward, can I ask, what would what were some of the things you would say would be signaling an actual movement that is an anti-capitalist option? What type of developments, organizations do you think would as it is, like, I guess what I'm asking is, like, in your mind, what should we be shooting for? If we can conceptualize the goal, we can start trying to build back into actual concrete steps to get there. So, what does that look like for you, I guess, as an anti-capitalist movement and option to actually fight back?
Then you go back to identity politics, but in identity politics, in a way that you use the arguments that show you for me is when I look at issues, is how do I show in the issue the problem that we have to face? So, for example, the discussions about immigration for me is very important discussion, because for me, the liberals are supporting immigrants at the moment. Yes, because it's a kind of we want the world to be looking a little bit better, and the poor immigrants very often is a very kind of patronizing way of understanding the immigrants. We know the poor immigrants, they want a better life, so we will support them. So it's and then you have the anti-immigrant, because saying we don't want too many people coming in our country, and the discussion about immigrants, for me, it's a way of looking at how the notions of humanity is very pessimist by looking at the immigration discussions. Because when you look at immigrants very often, and people seeing immigrants as the poor who needs help, or the problems that we don't want to bring into our country, they only see immigrants as, first of all, very often as the blob, no individuality, but they also have a very anti-human concept, notion behind it, because what they are saying is that immigrants are going to be an extra mouth to feed. They're not going to be individuals or human beings being part of the world that we live, whether in France, in Britain, or whatever. They're going to be extra mouth that we live in a limited world. So you have to look at, and for me, if we want to challenge and oppose capitalism, we have to challenge any notions that are anti-human and anti-politics. And when you look at immigrants as the mouth to feed, or the poor person that needs to be helped, the needy one, you are promoting an anti-human way of looking at the world. And so you cannot also challenge the social order that you have today. All you're doing is basically you are challenging ideas within the world, that the capitalist world. Basically, you are promoting one aspect of capitalist politics against another aspect of capitalist politics. This is how I see it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that if you don't challenge politics on some issues, so if you don't challenge some of the issues by looking at how those issues are promoting ideas that will prevent building a movement, then you cannot do anything. We have to think that humanity has a possibility of acting upon their own destiny before we can even change the world. Yes? If we don't believe that, then if we don't believe there is the possibility, then all we're doing is, those kind of, like I said, managing things. You have to. So there is some issue for me that are very important, because there are issues that can challenge the big barrier to any anti-capitalist politics that is possible. And I think the left has always gone away from those policies and politics. Sorry, those political issues, because it's basically the hardest politics that you have to fight for. It is very hard to fight for immigrants on the ground that the immigrants are should have as much right as anybody else. People will say, "Oh, it's about them. It's anti-democratic." What does it mean, democracy today? What does it mean to be a citizen today? Why would a nation be a political community better than any other community? How do you organize the nations? Those questions are not being asked. What do you think that political identity is better than national identity or racial identity? Those discussions are not being asked, because there is always this consensus that we are not supposed to be challenging. So I also agree with this idea that there is no critique of important issue today. Why would you think that racial identity is worse than national identity? In what way do you think it will make it worse? So because some people they like my book and they said, "Oh, it's great, you're fighting against racial identity and racism. Let's go and promote this idea of being proud of being British and proud of being French." And for me, it's just no. You have to see that if you are dividing people into those national community or racial community or sexual community or gender community, you are promoting an anti-human position, because you're saying that those kind of identity will determine you. If you're French, you don't have the same interest as the British person, apparently. You don't have the same interest as the Spanish, and you don't have the same interest as the American. And we're supposed to think that that's better than the black against white, against Asians, against, different ethnicity that people want to divide themselves into. You see what I mean? So there is some issues that are very important for me because they will challenge all the anti-human and anti-political issue that we have today that is never, ever challenged by the left.
And I get so
we're getting into some deep,
yeah,
gets into deep territory here.
Well,
So you believe in challenging the notion of nationalism, national identity, the nation state, even as an entity as well.
Yes, I'm challenging national identity.
Well, M. Toussaint,
that's the reason why I have a lot of people who are, Christine has a nice book, National Identity. Oh no, we ignore Christine when she's talking about national identity. And but when I talk about anti-identity politics, I'm not only talking about racial identity or sexual identity or gender identity. I'm talking about all social identity that are used to do politics. That includes national identity and political identity that is being accepted today.
What about the identity as a worker?
Class identity that is today is that also. When you look at the class identity today, it's like we are fighting for the interest of of workers. So they first of all basically making it as if it was homogeneous groups, and very often class identity is about we're fighting for the way of life of the workers, their communities, the communities of the workers. Look at how it's done today. Class politics is identity politics with the class as the identity groups. But so that's why they're fighting for working class institutions, working class way of life, working class language, working class habits, traditions. This is an identity.
And I think like one of the things, the product of American politics is like the constant referring to the white working class.
That's that as well.
Over and over again. And actually, there's like something that I should have actually sent this to you, Jason, as a trigger warning. But it ties into kind of like what we're talking about, and the critique on the right that they're very much invested in identity politics too. So Herschel Walker, former running back.
Player, yeah.
First
of all, let's stop referring to Herschel Walker as great. He was a great college player.
Yeah.
He did not have a very good NFL career. He started off in the USFL, a league that only lasted a few years. He was part of a very large trade in Dallas that actually built the Dallas franchise, trading him away to the Minnesota Vikings, where he had, I think, 1,000-yard season after he was traded. Wasn't really used properly and was soon out of the league. So his career in college was legendary. I believe he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. His career in the NFL was a little bit better than mediocre, one would say. He definitely never lived up to his potential. I don't know how much money he made in the pros, but he definitely played before mega contracts. So let's stop referring to him as the mega rich and mega successful legendary running back. He was an NFL player, Herschel Walker, that is best known for winning the Heisman Trophy in 1982.
But to my point, his son,
who
Christian Walker, describes himself as a man strictly attracted to men.
Mm-hmm.
But he is not gay.
Okay.
Because he doesn't believe in labels. And it's like all you did was just create a new identity of not gay.
Is he not gay because he wants to go to Christian heaven?
He just doesn't believe in labels. Like 100% is only attracted to men, identifies as man, but not gay. And like this.
Or is it because his dad is like, look, son, I'm running for office. I can't have a gay son running for the GOP ticket. You fuck all the dudes you want. But
It's not gay, but not hetero either. Yes.
It's not gay if you don't look at him in the eye.
It's not hetero. It's not gay. So it's a third another category. So basically, he give himself another label. He just doesn't want to name the label.
Yes, yes, yes. So this way he goes in front of like a bunch of these pride events, talks about how pride's destroying the country.
Oh, he says that stuff too?
Oh, that's his shtick. That's his shtick.
Hold on a minute. He's attracted to men as a male.
Openly talks about how he's only attracted to men, strictly attracted to men. That's
So
it. And
he's
that's
a
all.
right-wing gay man with an anti-gay agenda.
Yes, but describes himself as not gay because he's against labels.
But that's the thing. This is what people think is radical today. They think that changing the language is radical. Yeah. That's what they're doing basically. I don't like labels, so I'm going to call myself something different without calling myself something different. And by doing that, I will be changing the world. And this is the only way some people think they can change the world, changing the language or changing what's in your mind. But I think this is sad. This is part of the restriction, I think. That you think that only the language is only challenging labels will change the world. I think it's a little bit sad.
I mean, but why is he in the public eye? Like, how did he do that?
Well, because of his identity.
Tom Rathman's son. Because
he's mixed and like he's gay, right? Like
he's vocal. He's also vocal.
Yeah, so he's mixed. He's gay. He says I'm anti-labels, and he says all these inflammatory things.
And he names off all the labels that he is.
Well, but he just is those things. But like that's one of the, like when Candace Owens and all of them go out there, right? Like the fact that Candace Owens is a black woman helps her position in the right-wing media sphere.
Shirley says, "Is that like being in the closet but the door is open?"
Also, don't forget, it's also because TikTok and Instagram exists. That's why he's a thing.
Yes, yes.
He went to a gas station and showed the gas prices and started ranting about Biden. Yeah, that's.
Doesn't everyone?
Well, would, and in that video though, he's driving a Land Rover, and he's wearing a Gucci sweater.
That's right.
Complaining about $5 gas.
Look, this is all I got to say about Gucci sweaters. This is not in defense of this not gay kid. Let's just call him not gay. Right? This is not in defense of not gay kid. I was with my son in San Francisco, and apparently there was a nice woman who was selling hats that fell off of a truck. They had Gucci labels on them. They had Louis Vuitton labels on them. They had Chanel labels on them. Apparently they fell off of a truck, and she tried to return them to the truck. The truck didn't want them back, so she was selling these hats. So my son got a off the truck Gucci hat with Mickey Mouse on it.
Nice.
And when he showed it to his mom, he said, "Mom, look at my beautiful new hat." And maybe that's what not gay dude did.
Well,
maybe his sweatshirt fell off of the truck.
Maybe. And I'll say this: Phoenix deserves all of the nicest things in the world. All right, I'm just gonna put that out there for dealing with his dad. Phoenix deserves all the nice things in the world.
Wow.
So
more Gucci Mickey Mouse for Phoenix.
How many off the truck Land Rovers are there though? Right? Like that's the thing. Is like
Marcus, I don't know where you grew up, but there was a car dealership in my neck of the woods where there was a lot of people driving Land Rovers with Mitsubishi engines inside.
He's just popped the top off the Honda.
Oh man, it's like, why did your car break down? Well, it looks like you got a Pinto engine up in this Lexus. I don't know why we can't find the VIN number on this car. I can't speak for anyone on the screen right now. M. Toussaint, maybe you had a car dealership in your neighborhood that was similar to this, where some of the people that made their money in the illegal economy could always find a luxury car under $9,999. No, just me.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe not gay also. You reach out, we reach out to Christian Walker. But I mean, and going back to, I guess, like the original thing, because that's like I think probably the most extreme example that I can imagine, right, of like the reactionary right going so far, into the identity hole, that there's fighting so far against it that like not gay is something. Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. It's just something funny that I thought kind of alludes to what we got going on here. But I don't know. It's because I think too. It's like one of the things is I'm kind of curious about is that one of the questions I think a lot like also comes up is how do you engage? Do you engage? With people, and not obviously like Christian Walker. He's probably not going to be a get. He's got his way to make money, and he's going to do that, right? But there is the question of like, how do you engage with people on the right that, and I think to Christine's point is like, we need to start discussing and really like building in, our like institutions that are for everyone. And like, how do you actually get people to come to the woke side, if you will?
You want them to come to the woke? Isn't woke being not gay?
I mean, that's what they'll always. Oh, hey, you're just talking about woke madness, wokeness, and stuff like that, right? It was like, how do you get them? How do you do you engage with that? Is that something that do we engage with these type of people at all? Do you just leave it alone? But yeah, how would you, I don't know.
But why would you engage with the right more than anybody else? I mean, I don't understand the question actually. I mean, the gay, not gay, or there are some people saying they are not black. They have the
new black.
Or new black. Well,
wait, time out. Wait, time out. I'm missing. Where have I been? What's new black? Tucson. What's new black?
New black is old. Bow Wow was saying he was new black, and so was Pharrell Williams.
What does that mean?
Is new black like the new version of new Negro?
Do you get like discounts at the hard puts or something at a shoe store? What do you get with new black?
You don't get discounts. You get distance. Try to distance yourself from these other Negroes. That's what that is supposed to be.
Yeah, a new label, basically, just kind of a new identity.
You don't get new black, you get new distance.
So I can't get a free Slurpee at the 7-Eleven, but
no, sir.
But if your hair is not the right grade, you won't be able to touch me.
Yeah. You won't be able to touch it.
Is that what it is?
It's something like that.
Oh,
I remember that one. Yeah, you know who was on that? What's his name? The producer from Virginia, the young guy who's the son of the song.
She said Pharrell. She said Pharrell.
Yeah, Pharrell. Yeah, Pharrell was on that new black thing for.
That's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was like, with the new black. It was
this isn't a joke.
Yeah, it was like
the happy guy. Is that why he was
black.
so happy?
Black. You know what it was, Jason? You know what it was? Black, but not burdened by racial tension.
Yeah.
Motherfucker was happy.
Black without the baggage.
Wait.
So basically, creating a new identity. That's what they're basically doing. I mean, as if by doing that you're going to change something.
Right.
When the check came for Happy, is that when he decided he wasn't black anymore?
Exactly. Actually,
too happy to be black.
Too happy to be black. His ass was grinning all the way to the back.
Too happy to be black.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
That's why that Shirley will see. Shirley understood where I was going. New black is just a bite off the new Negro from the 1920s.
Hey, true story. I won't say the rapper's name. I was in a room with this is a few years ago. He somewhat well known. He had
You make me laugh.
he had co-wrote a song totally on accident with Fatboy Slim. Like he happened to be touring in Europe, and Fatboy Slim like saw him, and he was like, "Hey, dude, come to my house tomorrow. We'll record a song." And he's like, "Whatever." Right? That's just how he's part of a generation I was part of. When that's just how you met people, and if you guys got along, you would go record a song, right? And he goes and records a song with Fatboy Slim, and it becomes like an official song of the Olympics or some shit.
Oh wow!
And he got a check like a year. And he said he had never seen that many zeros in his life. And he didn't have a bank account. And he take that shit to check.
No.
Oh my god.
New black, man. He became new black.
It's just a new black problem.
All them zeros he spent. Oh my Lord. I'm new black.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Unreal.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
Well,
You guys aren't making this up.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I remember when they was coming out with the new black.
This is why I try to stay off the internet.
It's been a few years.
This has been going on for years.
Came out around the time of Obama.
Yeah, right?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
It is a new label. There's also another label, Super Straight.
Yeah.
I don't know how much traction it's been. Super Straight.
Super Straight?
Oh, super straight. You're not straight, you're super straight.
Right. You want to explain, Marcus?
I've heard of it. I don't remember. It's like you don't even look at like lesbian porn or some shit like that. I don't know what. You're
not attracted to trans women.
Oh.
Right.
How does that make you super straight?
These people want to have a word for things like, I only want to do this.
See, like you only come up with that term.
Mashed potatoes.
You only come up with a term like super straight after you like, and it's just hours and hours of staring at trans porn and just being uncomfortable.
I only watch super straight porn.
Yeah. No, just deleting the history. Like, I swear to God, I'm super straight.
Seeing that weenie Marcus, seeing that shit dangle like this. Their eyes look like those googly dolls.
It's like a fucking playground in here.
You gotta be super straight. I gotta go be super straight. This is too much for me.
When Pascal found out about furries.
This is I feel like Pascal when he found out about furries.
Yeah.
So there's black people that are beyond black, and there's straight people that are so straight they're boring.
Well, and don't forget about the not gays.
Oh, and
then
we also learned
not gay.
Yeah, we also learned about not gay. We learned a lot of identities today.
Oh my God,
Christine, do you feel like
Christine? You came here and invented 4 identities, talking all like you try to look at the world through a humanist lens, and you literally just invented 17 identities.
This is the world today. I mean, you're a bit beyond.
I am behind in more ways than one.
Happy Pride.
Jason is not straight. No.
What does boring straight mean? What is there? Can it be boringly heterosexual?
It's just missionary.
Just missionary through a sheet.
Once a month, missionary. You got to be married.
That would be the missionary straight. Missionary straight.
Missionary straight. Yeah. Missionaries. That's a new identity.
Missionary straight. Yeah?
Missionary straight. Bam. Missionary straight.
Oh, thanks for that.
4 pumps.
That's not the best identity, is it?
That's not the best. Speak for yourself.
Doggy straight.
Doggy straight.
Y'all are going off the reservation today, boy.
Keeping all my clothes on.
Marcus started all of this.
Marcus
I
did start all
apologize.
this shit.
I
Why did you
apologize.
bring up Herschel Walker in the first place?
Well, the whole time, honestly, this whole discussion, as soon as we started talking about, early when Christine brought up the fact that like identity politics is the actual way most people understand, like politics at all. It's just been sitting in my head like Christian walk like that, because that's the extreme. That's like the most. It's just ridiculous, right? And obviously, we go off and laugh about it, but I think it just it just tells so much about the world that we're living in, where something so absurd, is not only said, repeated, liked, shared, retweeted, but it's also monetized, and that's something that, like, I don't, yeah, it's just, it's wild. It's wild. We got to do something, right? So
Somebody said I'm a Bill Maher socialist.
Shut the fuck up. I want to do a shout out to Landrew. We should do a shout out to Landrew for.
Oh, can we give you a shout out to Landrew? Thank you so much for your super chats. Let's be honest here. We are horrible at promoting the super chats, and Landrew, you help us out tremendously with keeping this show afloat, being able to do things, especially with the video essays, as far as trying to up the production value and enabling us to do things like send Cuba microphones. And we're going to get Pascal a boom stand next for his microphone, so we can even have, I want more volume of Pascal so you guys can hear the Robert passion.
Put the bear and Pascal Robert.
He puts the bear. That's a sexual identity right there.
It's a new furry.
The new four is the Pascal Robert.
That's another one. Can new black people get reparations, or are their checks so big that was their reparations?
Now introducing the This Is Revolution line of NFTs. You get your Pascal Robert.
Like when Pharrell got that happy check, was he like, oh shit, I don't even need reparations?
Maybe. See with Oprah.
God, he made so much money. That song was in my dreams.
It kind of reminded me of that story. It's Amerigo Gazaway, who's done like a few, an album with Deploy the Legend, but he also got this Soulmates, project that he does where he takes like classical artists, or more like like old time artists, and like makes them with more contemporary. So like Mos Def and like Yasin Bey and like Marvin Gaye is one that's like got the most acclaim. He actually made 2 of those albums. The first one got like taken off immediately because of DMCA. The second one actually made it out to the rounds of like some person that worked at Apple, and it was Apple Music that ended up going to the Marvin Gaye estate, working out a deal for the rights to the songs, and and then ended up as an iPad commercial.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's like, and so that was like his pretty much his moment of like, oh shit, like I'm rich,
Like getting your shit on an Apple commercial it could be one of those things where you think you're rich until you realize not really. You remember that story about that band? I think we talked about on the show not long ago, Pomplamoose. They had like in a Lavino commercial, they had a song, and they got like 6 figures, and they went on tour and played a bunch of clubs to nobody, but they bought a new van and all new equipment and were broke like the first few weeks.
That'll do it.
I was like, oh man, that sucks for you. Oh my God. Okay, M. Toussaint.
Mm-hmm.
What are your closing statements for today?
Closing statements. I'm not sure if we created enough identities today. But I think you did all right. Always good to see Christine. I love the way you say the word "how." It's awesome. It's great. Marcus,
Okay.
I would have liked to see more Winston.
Yeah, he's under the bed asleep. Sorry.
Nice. Pascal, keep up the good work. You guys have done some seriously good work this week. Really proud of you. Playing with other friends in the podcast world. Good stuff.
We're gonna keep on doing that, and don't forget, next week we will be in New York City.
Can you say New York City?
With a live show with Ben Burgess, Margaret Kimberly, Doug Lane, and Norm Finkelstein. And we might be, it looks like some of us are going to be at Ben Burgess's debate, where he will be debating, was it Tulsi Gabbard, James O'Keefe, and Tim Pool. So that's going to be fun.
Oh, man. I set up an event for Tulsi in my former life. It's so wild.
Did you really?
Yeah.
If she was still a Democrat.
Yeah. She was like, I mean, solidly within the party. I think that was when she was still on the in the DNC, like the actual like committee stuff. So, yeah.
Somebody asked if I have any fights lined up, because I said I'm going to reignite the East Coast West Coast beef when I go to New York, because the Warriors won and I'm coming in like Snoop knocking over buildings.
Pascal is not laughing. How dare you?
Loser ass coast.
Pascal is like, I'm not trying to be anywhere near his silly ass. I'm just kidding.
It's all good, brother. Christine, it was always a pleasure to have you on the show. I always find your engagements intellectually profound, and they make me think all the time.
Oh, thank you. But I have to say I enjoy being in the show because you do give me a great challenge. I mean, all of you.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And this is the thing is that Christine too, is that you've also given, I feel like you give us a challenge as well, as that what you're describing is a necessary way to change, I think, our thinking, our rhetoric, around trying to organize a movement. But not so much as to say like, hey, here's the 1, 2, 3s, like I know what's best, and like, here's what you got to do in order to solve these problems. I think you just do a great job of articulating an issue that we have. But it's up to us, right, to find out the solution.
Oh, I have no solutions. And I have to say my point of view changing too. Nothing is in kind of in straight and fixed. So I can't tell you this is it because myself I read and think, and you presented the challenge, so I have to think about what you ask and what you say, and then go and think more. So
next time we'll be able to do this whole show in French to make it easier.
You do it in French.
I feel like crap, because there's some. If you notice, she wants to answer in French, and she's like, she's gonna catch herself and think of the translation. So I'm like, nope, we're gonna figure this out, and we're just gonna give Pascal notes because he can say it all in French.
No, I will use the franglais, not French.
The franglais.
Franglais. I don't speak French anymore. I speak franglais.
French and English.
A mix of French and English. That's my problem.
New identity.
Yeah.
Franglais is also one of Marcus's brothers.
He speaks Spanglish though. That's
Franglais. Franglais speaks Spanglish. And only eats chitlins. And I don't know what that is. That's chitlins. Super black right there. Is that guy super black?
It's jerk chitlins though.
Well, I also want to
jerk chitlins.
Jerk chitlins.
It's a new thing.
That is a new identity right there.
Yeah.
Jerk chitlins.
Jerk chitlins.
Happy
Juneteenth, y'all. Enjoy your jerk chitlins.
Been discovered. Jerk chitlins. Well, happy Father's Day to the fathers out there.
Oh, it's
Father's
Well,
today for
happy
you?
Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and happy Juneteenth holiday, commemorative Juneteenth. Everybody enjoy the holiday,
And if
and
apparently,
shout
if
out
you
to
guys,
the Revolution. And this week, this day next week, we will be in New York City.
that's so crazy. God, I'm so terrified.
Woo,
Going
child.
again.
So you're all traveling there, New York.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm already here. And no one is coming to my apartment. No one is coming here. No.
No, it's
All
Father's
right.
Day tomorrow. Someone's asking, is it Father's Day today? No, it's Father's Day tomorrow. So happy Father's Day to who's this? Cedric Johnson, Adolph Reed Jr. Who else is a dad we know on the show? Andrew Hartman, well, Gene Bajlan,
Gene Bajlan.
Doug Lane, Sam Cedar. Who else do we know that's a dad? That's about it.
Yeah, man. The millennials.
Who else is a dad
Kids.
that comes on the show all the time?
Does Burgess have kids?
No. Pulled out way early.
Burgess has books.
Pulled out way early.
Thank you guys. And don't forget, happy Juneteenth. And if you can convince a white person to give you $100,
Go for
That's how
it.
you
not?
celebrate.
you go for it. You go for it. And have a very good rest of your day. We are